So, what story does the three monotheistic religions tells us and keep repeating all the time? Basically, it's the story of how God chose to create the world, and it is one God, one source, a God we cannot know. We call it a personal God. That means it's a God that has traits and ways that resembles the human ways. It's like we are reading in the Old Testament and the story of the Christ, and then in the Quran, this God has chosen to put this world into motion, and His will be done and has been done, and He started it in a certain way by creating things, and then came the humans into that world. Whether this story is complete or lacking is a big discussion. And the opponents of the three monotheistic religions would say, well, we have already found many holes in that story. Whether you believe in the Old Testament, the New One, or the Quran, the Last Testament, as some would say, and I know this can provoke some monotheists as well because they only see their side of the picture. I'm trying to step a little back and see the picture in correlation with what God really wants to tell us in these stories. It's like a story about manifestation of who we are related to that one God. It's about abandoning all the false gods and ideas that we humans can walk with in life. We have a big imagination as humans, and we have a long history, or short one if you want to see it in the perspective of the big cosmos that has been around for much further than we have. But then you have this story about how God created everything. And this is what's about in the three books. It's telling you a story of creation. In the beginning was nothing, and then God said, let it be, and it became. It's like a process was set in motion, like an order that made things happen. And it's difficult to imagine that order, but we know from different other places in these old texts that it's a scientific thing that God made, what we call scientific. That means it follows the logic of how things are made and done. It just goes so rapidly and so quickly that we cannot follow it. It's like I still can't imagine how a 3D printer works, even though there is a science behind it and it's fairly easy to understand it today. And imagine that, but much more rapid or in a totally different way, that you can just give an order and everything will be set in motion and the whole cosmos will be there. And in that cosmos came what we call the humans, the conscience, or what I call the beast, trapped in the human form in this totally sealed and closed environment that we cannot escape. And so each of the three texts have its own way of uh, telling us about this creation and the first moments of it. Especially the Old Testament is used also in the New one because the New Testament is focused on the story of Jesus, not the story of creation. This is also something to be noticed. That's why many scholars of the New Testament, the evangelical texts of the Christ, they go back to the Old Testament, trying to get the inspiration there or believe this is the foundation for their new story. And then you have the Quran that seems to be an entity for itself. It doesn't really refer to the old text as a way of looking back. It just see itself as a continuation of that true story. But it retells the story again in several places, not in details, not how it happened, but that it happened. And this is the basic idea of the monotheistic religious text. It tells you that it happened. There has been a creator, someone, something, what we call a god, and a super being that hears and feels and understands and has wisdom, knowledge, all the traits that we humans also got, but on a different level, in a different way that we can't imagine or understand or completely get beyond. This idea is provoking to science, I know that, and provocative for people who goes the way of like wanting to research things and grow by researching and knowing and gaining power and harnessing the effects of it. But a strong group of monotheistic scholars have been also argumenting for the truth of these three books by science and by showing the limitations of science and that they basically do not contradict. They are just on a higher level. And it's like we are just saying the three basic religions of monotheism has told us a story we really can't grasp scientifically. And when we try to look into it, we find many holes in our researches. And it's not up to me to explain that here. But if you look out, you will see scholars discussing this if you open your eye to it. It's not true that it is religion against science, and it's not right to say that the creation story told here is completely false. Neither can you say it is 100% right unless you are a believer. If you believe in the monotheistic creed and you follow it, you will of course give yourself to that story. I've seen many scholars of the Old Testament trying to make sense of the story of creation in the first book of Genesis and how things came to be, and the same with the Christian scholars who try to find the meaning in the cosmos by looking back at the Old Testament, but also looking into the traits of science and trying to give arguments for that. And so did the Muslim scholars as well, trying to piece together the small stories of creation, how God made it come to life, and how He then put Adam and Eve into it, and from there we came. This is all we need to know, tells us these books. They say this is what you really need to know. You don't need all the details of how it came to be. It's too complicated, maybe, or too far out of reach for us to grasp, especially in the old days. Maybe now we have a little chance to try and imagine, like if you tell about the 3D printer or about the AI technology that is creating things and creating material and words, you can imagine that maybe in a total different level that we can't even imagine yet, even though we got further. But imagine people from the Middle Ages. How could they imagine even things like that? They had to just surrender their mind to a God that gave it life, never knowing how and which processes were behind, or what DNA and blood and all these biological processes that we know a lot more about today. They wouldn't have had a chance if these books started to tell about that. But maybe you can put it forward differently and say these books should have told about it, maybe in more in detail. It's not up to me to say. I do not understand the creation to say why and why not a God chose to tell or not. But I can understand how far away of the understanding of humans this is. To understand how things came to be. And so, in the same manner today, even though we've made big steps towards technological improvements, we still have many, many black holes in our mind and understanding. And so these books have not been outdated, as some would like to say. They've also been attacked for saying stuff about the creation that's not totally accurate, especially the Old Testament is attacked fiercely by that. The Quran has put things in ways that it's difficult to attack because it doesn't give you all these details about days and months like the Old Testament does in the same way. It does say that one day counts for 1,000 in God's understanding and creation. And so everything was put together in 6 days, and so it means 6,000 years. Even that is being opposed by the scientists who see traces of who wanted to research how far back does this universe date, and they found traces of things that goes back tens and hundreds of thousands of years. But if you look deep into that as well, and this is what the religious scientists are doing too, the monotheistic scientists, they say, are we really sure that things date so much back because we only have these instruments. We could be totally wrong on that issue. And even if they date back, uh, there could be something with our understanding that's wrong and not in the texts themselves. So you have here a logic that keeps repeating itself from the people of the framework of the religious books and the framework of the scientific researchers, saying that this creation of God has been the origin, and we can maybe get hints on how it happened and what, like when you say the first was the word, and then the first was the sound, and you say the first was the will of God. This is what put it all in motion. In a blink of an eye, the will came, or the God's will was there, and then everything came to be. Before that, there was nothing, or nothing we know of. There could be something else. There must have been. Our logic binds us to understand that, and this is another discussion. So the basic story of the three books is to say there is a God who had a will and put things into motion, and things came to be, and in that he created these humans, what we call the forms of the creations, and they were descended into this creation to be in it, to grow, to lead it, to become ready, whatever, to get back to the higher realms. And they're going to have a fight and a trouble with the envious fallen one who does not like it to be like that. It's like he's an opposer of God's will, the will of that supreme power, as you can say. You can see in that resemblance to maybe other stories, or some inspirations from the old mythological stories of gods fighting, or the one God. But here it's put into a more like realistic form. We say one God, and there's the Satan who has so much power that he resembles a demigurg, a kind of a god that is opposing God's ultimate power. So it's not far to say that maybe these monotheistic religions is just trying to simplify something that already has been told before, or maybe just put it for the people who lived in the Middle Ages, and we are just on the steps of getting beyond that, and so we are going to need a new message from the one God that really reshapes things and tells us how to look at it in a new way, because now we are ready for it. This also could also be like a message for transhumanist ideas and a message for scientific minds. This could very well be that level we got onto. And these promises are also put in the three books of monotheism, that there will be a renewing of the message of God. The books is going to be the basics in that time until a new one appears and a renewal appears. And then we hit the problem of psychology, and God hits the problem of psychology that he created, that humans are too stubborn and they keep sticking to the thing they know about and feel safe with and think and have been fighting for all these years and spilling their blood. And so in that way, you understand that when Christ came and told people about his sacrifice and that things are going to happen, and God made it to be like that, he got opposed by the Jewish communities whom he belonged to, because they have seen false prophets before, and in their longing for a savior and a king and the one who will come from David's eight, and he will help bring the light and the big kingdom to life, they saw that he was a false preacher, and so they tried to stop him. And if it is true that he told that I am the God, they really clearly saw him as delusional. I know that because I also understand Christianity from a Muslim perspective, and I understand it from a Jewish one. Like if you are holding on to the name of the one God, and you suddenly get a person who preaches to you that it is he who is the God manifested in earthly form, you will react, even though this could be, like when a Christian debated me on this. I said to him, I am an Abrahamic monotheist, but I understand that if God wants something to happen, it can happen. If God wants to create of himself, part of him in a human form, it could happen. The idea is not beyond God. But did it happen that way? This is what they are discussing and fighting over and rejecting in each other. And so the Jewish, if you see it from a psychological perspective, have been fighting for the name of the one God who put everything into motion and put us in this world to fight and suffer and fight our egos and the devil and the life around us to grow enough to get that peace and mercy forever. And Christ, as the Jewish prophet, who went rogue in their idea or who maybe got misinterpreted, whatever. I believe there is a third story to it. That is that some of those who hated his message of renewal, like Johannes' message of renewal and his father Zechariah, they actually put the idea of him claiming to be God into the ears of the Roman ruler and spread it among the people more than he wanted that. Maybe that's a third possibility of that story. That he was accused of that to make it easy to get rid of him because nobody is accepted as a God or a person as God. But anyhow, when God wants to renew a message, he sends a new messenger, it seems, in the monotheistic idea. And so the Jews were holding on to these old texts and the stories of their prevail and dreams for so long. They've been spilling blood for it, living in ghettos, being persecuted for it. And then now comes somebody who tells them total different stories somehow. Even though I see big traces of Christ not trying to tell them different stories. Joshua was trying to manifest the old stories, just telling them, you went too far in all these rules and regulations and you are so corrupt inside yourself. Look into your psychology and your hearts and try to clean up from the inside out. The hatred, the envy, the stuff you're getting into has taken you too far. You've forgotten, and I'm here to remind you. And so he's the final. Okay, and here's the Christians, they stop, and some of the Jews, they follow that, and they say this is the final, this is the king, and he's from David's trace, and so it could be him. And other Jews, they kept opposing to that, and now starts a new fight. That's an internal one, again, monotheist against monotheist. And if you look at the New Testament, it doesn't really reveal a lot about creation. It gives us small hints about it, but it's actually a story about the human called Joshua, Christ, Christos, Mashiach, who is walking among the people, trying to renew the psychological faith in them, to clean up all the things they've gone wrong, to point out things they should have done more correct or take it easy on, to bring back that humanity into their hearts. So it's a message about the way he is working with people to remind them of their life and how it can be seen in a greater light of the eternal life. He gives them a lot of parables about what we saw in this life is what we harvest and the same in the other life, and so on and so on. Many, many beautiful stories is told there, and parables and situations that you really, if you look at it with open eyes, you will find is beautiful. And so he is a very special figure, and he survived the killings. He survived whatever they were trying to do. And so comes the Quran, who in a way both tells the story of creation and take an approach to the stories of the prophets as well. One of the most repeated story in the Quran is the story of the Old Testament, of the prophets. It's very strange because the Quran is put like a small poetic insights. It's like when you start reading it, you find it different from the way the Old Testament is written, like an historic account of the prophets and with small intrigues. It's like you're reading a novel in a way. And the New Testament, it's like you are reading an account of the life of the Christ. But the Quran is like you're reading poetic pieces that sheds light on small dialogues between God and the devil, who got pushed out of the heavens and hated Adam for why God had put him in that position, and from there the fight starts, and the advice to Adam and his his followers and his people to not listen to that and to know that he is their enemy. He will try to do wrong to them. And so you have these small insights about that of the creation, but then you see another poetic shifts, that for people who do not understand the cohesion in the Quran, they will see it as like a crazy madman's rambling about this and that and this and that. But that's not true, because those who look deep into the Quran and understood how the texts are, they see they are coherent inside them. They are not just small fragments of notes and ideas that are put like wildly together. This is how many imagine this book. And this is wrong, because they never opened it. And if they have opened it, they have opened it with a certain way to look at it, and they just closed it again. Those who kept open it, reading in it like I did with all the 3 books, you will see that each of them has its strength and its way of putting things. But I was saying that the Quran is like shedding light on the creation by retelling that God made it, and how things happened in very short words. There are no details. And this is for some people enough to say, well, because they didn't know. They were just trying to guess that this God did it, and now you just follow what the God did. They didn't have any scientific knowledge. But then you find that it doesn't matter, they tells you. What matters is that you will one day find that your life is what's worth looking at. And if you want your life to succeed, you will do good to turn to that God. This is what the message is about. Christ's whole life is about making people turn and accept his Father, the God. And this big sacrifice that's ground shaking was about making people aware that even the ultimate sacrifice can be from a God, just to make the humans aware. It's like clapping the hands, say, look here, look at the scene, look what it brings you. And so if you go back to the Old Testament, you will see that it's all put in motion because of those chosen people who prophet by prophet and generation after generation had to lift the burden of following in the step of that God amongst humans who are not. And so you see there is something very special about the monotheistic religions. They are organized, they have a clear story, and they tells you why things are, not how. There are not many details on the creation story of how it's made, but you find traces of scientific proofs, and scholars have been looking in all 3 texts, each from his own culture and perspective, to find what God have hidden of messages that sometimes also, not sometimes, but they wanted to see it fits with the scientific knowledge. And I think that Quranic scholars have been very keen on that from early on, to try to find all the signs, because there are many signs that talks in poetic forms about like the ellipses of the sun, and how the moon and the sun is in each of them is floating in the skies, each in his own or her own lane, her own sphere. And this is amazing to see that this is actually an accurate description of how we depict the skies today, and how the many other things are described also very with very sensitive words, that if you look into science today, you can maybe see resemblances. But then they overstretch it. Of course, they want to find more than there maybe is. And the same with the Old and New Testament. The scholars there have been looking very fiercely to say, well, we have a lot of things that proves that this is right. That's not wrong. And I know that the modern scientists, they would say, shaking their heads, saying this is not true at all. The way the Old Testament accounts for the creation does not fit with our scientific knowledge today at all. It's pieces of it that maybe fits, but you cannot use it as a scientific ground. If it was, the world would have been flat, and life would have been much shorter. And that's why the church had to persecute people who tried to listen to this, what we call heroistic worldview. That means the creation of the earth as one of the final steps, or the humans who are not in the center of it all. But it's the helium, the sun, the that floating fireball in the sky that is maybe the center of our realm and our world, and beyond it is bigger world. And so they try to stop that, because they saw that if this happens, it's of the devil's work, because it's basically showing cracks in how the texts are depicting the story of creation. And if that happens, that could have big effect on people's faith. And what they want is for people to get saved. To get saved, you have to follow the text and follow God's word in it. This is the only source. And so if the devil, in their opinion, helped the scientists to find another way of looking at the universe as being created differently from what they are telling, this many people could turn away. And so they had to persecute these people, burn them, and see them as devil workers. And so today we shake our heads, and very rightly so, on about that. Fairly to say, maybe the Islamic world was the one with the least incidents of this, and the Catholic world has been the one with the most incidents of this, because they are stuck in between the Old Testament and their own story, and maybe later also the Quranic stories, because their account is about the Christ, and they had to climb a big mountain to go back to the Old Testament and find the creation stories there and try to defend them, even though it's not what the Christ is focusing on at all in the Bibles they have gathered as the final New Testament from God to the Jewish people and to everybody else. And so you have some contradictions here that they have been fighting with, whilst the Muslims have been trying to piece together the poetic fragments in the Quran, not fragmentations, but fragments. It's like a puzzle. You have to put it all together and look at it and see every word and every sentence, how it's used and how it's put together, and try to see if the science would follow you on that or not. And they believe the science would follow. And so you have the least contradictions there, while you have the most ones in the Catholic Church. And they were so keen on having people following their faith that they were ready to use means of evil to put them in place. And that's why we got the persecutions of people who had a different creation story. Of course, I'm not discussing here the people who have a total different creation story like you have in the Eastern religions, or in the nature religions. They were persecuted, and they were by all three religions meant to be very, very simplistic, wrong, and not on the right path. And they had to evolve to take over the monotheistic views. And so many people from the simple nature religions disappeared over time, or changed and evolved, if you can say, into understanding life as a creation of one true source, wise and knowledgeable, and there are no other gods. There is no God for the wind, and the God for the thunder, and for the harvest, and love, and so on. It's all from this one source, but there are powers that he put in motion through angels and demons and other creations that works automatically on automation, or works according to some kind of logic that we do not know, but they work out there. And so in a way you can say, okay, the monotheistic religions, they tell you there are no other gods, but they still confirm there are some helpers and layers of like creative forces. It's like God isn't like in detail pushing everything to be. This God is so sophisticated and knowledgeable that he don't need to be everywhere to make things happen. He already prefabricated things and will happen according to some kind of rules or some kind of processes. And so in that way things will happen according to God's will, and in according with what this God wants. Nobody can get out of that, but within it you have the freedom to choose, and the outcome will be what you choose. It's like when you choose a number somewhere in the lottery or something like that. But it's all according to some rules. If you point at one gate and it opens, and and what comes out is your outcome from it. It's not easy to grasp and to understand that it could be like this, because we are limited in the way we understand things. And this is maybe what we need to understand, to be humble when it comes to these three religions, that they are trying to show us that whatever you do, you must be humble. But we also try to attack them and criticize them. Some people with vicious, evil minds, I know that, but most people, just because they love science, like we do, many people do, also religious people do. Not all religious people are dumb and stupid and just want to shut their eyes, but there are many who do not understand the logic of science, the way to think outside how they look at things. They just want to blindly read a text and just shut their eyes for the sun on the sky and the moon around it and so on. They just want things to fit as in the book, and not the book of the universe. And this is a big problem. It has been and still is for the three monotheistic religions, because whatever they put forward, there are some things in science that does not match it completely. But at the same time, you can say science hasn't reached that part where it can disprove them, has it? And according to religious scientists, I mean, I don't mean scholars, I mean people who study science, physics and chemistry and astrology and biology and so on. They would say, these religious scientists who are believers in one or more of the old books, they would say, well, I'm not sure we're gonna disprove their stories. Maybe one day we will understand the harmony between those stories and the universe, and we are getting to know more. So when people talk about the God's gene in humans that makes us seek and understand the God because we cannot be gods on our own, they turned it and said, yeah, that doesn't mean that we are creating God in our minds. That means that the God has put something in us so we can find him. It's like a beacon. We can find this God like a GPS. Wherever we are, however we are, we find ourselves calling out for this bigger force. And so that's why you find really many people, even people who call themselves not religious, they have some sort of feeling about something bigger, even though they deny it, they bury it, they put it under the surface, because they do not want to acknowledge that they have this feeling that will contradict their minds and their scientific approach as they see it. It will be shattering for their image of themselves and how logical they are approaching life, but they are not really. So when these people put it aside, it doesn't disappear. It's a beacon. It keeps calling out for a higher being. That's why we idolize people who are special, because we see they are more in common with a god or gods or higher beings than we are. And so the higher you are on that ladder, the more godly like you can see people, or you can feel you are. But it's part of us, and that's what these books are telling us. They're telling us God has attracted you like a magnet, and that's why many people have a religion of a kind, have some side of spiritual way of thinking, or an idea about the creation and life, whether it's true or false. These three books tells us everything is false, but this one story, the story of a creator who had a will and put it all in motion, and then came your forefathers, and you've been descending in this to grow, to suffer, to toil, to get harvest out of it at the same time, and to get judged by what you've been doing, to see if you are able and capable to get back to that higher realm or not, or you will be staying and suffering forever, or maybe in a kind of a punishment forever. Depends on how you act, how you use your brain and your facilities, your heart and your way of looking. That's why to be humble, not to hate these books, even though you can hate the people in them sometimes for their hypocrisy and hatred and evil-mindedness. How many times haven't we met people from these three religions who are, you can see through them, you can see how false they are, how abusive, how they have done to people, small ones, big ones, whatever, taken the money and so on. So there is some kind of evil in these people, even though they are connecting to these sources. That's why some of us would see these two religions as a source of evil, like a creation of, if you ask the Gnostics, the old Gnostic secret societies, they would say everything of these religions is a creation of the devil because he wants to take us away from the true God is behind everything. God hasn't sent these messages or messengers or trying to divide us with it. He's sending an eternal beacon of love and unity to humanity. But he let the devil like work his way through us and this life. He has powers and means that makes us be like we are. And so we have to pass through that, see beyond the realm of what these religions are offering. This is where the mystics and mysticisms comes in. They try to see the true face of God behind it all and to understand it from within, to get the light in the hearts that makes them go beyond even these texts, but find the gates through the texts. It's like these texts are not totally closed. They have a lot of gates to the spirit and to the understanding that opens up like keys for doors into new places in the mind and in the heart and in the soul. And this is what these people try to do, to go beyond and go deep. And many people stay on the gates. Many people stay fighting, quarreling over a few words, or just worshiping in the temple. And these people who grow so much, they go beyond and see, what if all this is just gates? And this is an idea that's widespread today, that religions are gates to the one true God that we cannot know, or to the truth behind it all. And some would see it as devil's work because it's dividing us and not completing the sacrifices. But that's also troublesome, because you see all these sacrifices from these beautiful prophets. They can be hot-headed, hard-minded. They can be angry at some times. They can be in despair, but they're fighting for something, and this is the name of that God. This is what makes them survive. The stories of the one God. He said, "I'm gonna show you through humans I choose how passionate they are for me, for my name and my cause. That whatever you do, you cannot take them apart. You can take their bodies apart, but then their blood will go into the earth and it will grow." And that's exactly what happened. Every prophet left the legacy, and Christ, as one of the greatest, left a great legacy that kept on feeding people's minds and hearts and passion for the love of that God that's behind the Christ. And so with the Muhammad and the Arabs and the Ismailites, a total renewal of the, what can you say, that covenant, that understanding that the Jews had and still have with the one God. That they are fighting eternally is small-mindedness, and it's a kind of spiritual limitedness, and it's kind of the devil's work, if you can say, the human psychology, the hatred. This is why it's troublesome, because they haven't had the ability to renew us and see themselves in the light of perspectives. They see themselves in the light of right and wrong, truth and false, me or him, us or them. And that's why we are in a bad shape, really, because every time these messages got renewed, well, they hit a new wall. Like, imagine how it would be if you are holding on, let's say, to the Quran, and then a new message comes. And if you are a Christian, and then another message comes. And if you are a Jewish, you would, of course, tend to say, no, this is a false message. How can I know it's true? And so you have to take your time, and maybe you will fight it back. Maybe you'll just see it as evil. So this is our problem, that what we see is evil is maybe not that. And so some of the, what could you say, deep-minded people, they say, let's look beyond it and let's see God's trace in everything. We are all the creation of God in different ways. And so they came to that understanding that religions are just gates. The religions of the East have traces of a godlike figure in the same way, maybe not organized and as clear as in the Bibles and the Quran, but you can have them in the same way, looking into the creation as an organizing force, and force that will recycle our lives into a better or worse world, and so on. Even nature religions, it's like they put a hierarchy, And if you go to the Greeks, well, they organized it very well in the stories and the mythology of the gods and goddesses. Uh, at least they included the women there. This is also one thing that we don't understand about the three books here, is that, is this God a he or a she or a it or something in between or beyond? Well, the God himself tells us, I'm not nothing like you. Don't compare yourself to me and don't compare me to you. Only the names are in common. And this came very clearly in the Quran, and also had an inspiration in the New Testament and the Old One, that do not even try to imagine a godlike figure. You can only, within the limit of the human, understand what you have. We don't even grasp the whole universe around us yet, even though in God's world it's a small one. It's nothing. In these books, this is what they are telling us. It's nothing. So everything is much beyond you. Don't start trying to want to understand God. Understand yourself and what you need to grow and get the salvation. This is what their focus is. And so they tell us a story about creation, not because they want to tell us the science behind it, but because they are showing us, okay, you want to know, you're curious, here it is. In small short words, there is somebody who put it in motion, and so we have to remember they're rewriting these stories from the prophets, and things can go wrong, or maybe the texts have been interpreted in different ways. So it's not really the scientific proof behind it, they will tell you. It is the message in it, that you get a story, that you know your origin, you're not lost, you're not left behind, you're not forgotten.